Today we're going to talk about all the books I read in November and if you should read them too. The romance was on point. I was like, ooh, go off. Huge twist at the end that really got me. This book thoroughly destroyed me. Jaw on the floor. I wasn't prepared. I was shook. Oh, for the count. I feel like I have a problem with my obsession of this book. Left the chat. I was gone to another dimension. Welcome to my November reading wrap up. In November, I read 6 books. 2 of those were fiction books, with one of them being general fiction and one historical fiction. I read 2 romances and 2 fantasy, with one being a fantasy romance. So we got a pretty even split this month with books, and also this month is tied with September with being the smallest amount of books I've read in a month this year, which 6 books is still a lot of books to read in a month. I read some longer books too, as you can see. Not as many books to talk about today, but I'm still gonna give you the tea on whether these books are worth it. We're gonna start with fantasy, since the first 2 books I read this month were fantasy, and the first book I read this month was actually Phantasma. So I kind of read this at the end of October, beginning of November, and I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was so much fun, and the concept was really enjoyable to follow, and the romance was on point. It also had a huge twist at the end that really got me. I gave this book 4 stars. Basically, it's very similar to Caraval, if you know what that book is. There's this competition in this book hosted by devils, and our main character, Ophelia, who is a necromancer, follows her sister into this competition. Phantasma is very deadly, but if you win, you get a devil's wish granted to you. The stakes were so high, and like I said, the twist at the end seriously got me so good. My mouth, jaw on the floor. I was shook. I also feel like I read this book so fast, and I was always thinking about it when I wasn't reading it, and I was like, oh, I want to read, and it makes it really easy because it's broken up. You can see kind of on the side that there's a lot of dark pages, and it's broken up into night 6 of Phantasma. There'll be a couple chapters in there, or it'll be night 1 of Phantasma, or 2 days before Phantasma, or the night after Phantasma, or all the levels, because they have to go through the 9 levels of hell during Phantasma. So it made it super easy and super fast paced to just pick up and read. I didn't want to put it down. I really like this, and I'm excited for the next one, which I believe we are following the sister, and it comes out next year. This book is also on Kindle Unlimited, so if you have that, would recommend. Although this book is compared to Caraval a lot, there were so many differences. Like, I think the main concept is similar, but obviously the characters are different, the execution is different, and this is an adult romance, whereas Caraval is more YA, and the writing styles are very different too. Because I read Caraval, I think, in October or September, so it was pretty recent to when I picked this book up. Yeah, I never felt like I was comparing the two or felt like, oh, this is just a copy paste, you know? Again, similar concepts, but the execution and what like actually makes up the meat of the story was different. And I will say this was also very spooky, so if you like dark romances or if you like romanticies, definitely reach for this book. It was very entertaining, and the characters are enjoyable to follow along. All the interactions, there were so many different things going on. The manner and the setting of the devil's house that the competition takes place in was super atmospheric and contributed to like the spooky vibes. There was hauntings, there was ghosts and ghouls and like all these different things, and she's a necromancer, so you get to see a lot of that side too, which I really enjoyed. Would 100% recommend this book if you are into any of those things. I enjoyed it a lot. The next fantasy book that I read in November was Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, and I really love this book. I keep thinking about it. I gave it a 4 stars, but I might give it a 4.5 because I just loved this book. I really took my time reading it. I think it took me a week to read it, and it's only a little over 300 pages, but it's pretty dense. Opposite to how Phantasma is, this book was definitely a slower read. I never felt like I needed to know like what happens next or like where paragraphs would leave off. I wasn't itching to keep reading, but I wanted to keep reading because I was enjoying it and I was enjoying the story and how it was being told. So this book is written like the main character's journal. That was super fun, and I feel like we got a really close look at who our main character was, which is Emily, and she is a professor and her specialty is fairies. So she has gone all over the world for a decade studying different species of fairies for her encyclopedia, and finally she has reached the end point and has traveled to this small town in, I want to say in Norway. It's very much winter there, but she is there to study her last species of fairies for her encyclopedia. And there's also a little romance woven throughout too, which was super fun. And then the ending, I was like, oh my goodness. It was a lot darker than I expected because people, I feel like, describe it as a cozy fantasy and whimsical. And not sure if I would say it's cozy or whimsical. Fairies in this world cannot be very nice and will use humans for whatever they wish. So I feel like it was darker than what I thought it would be, but I still enjoyed it. What happened at the end and how that all got resolved, I loved following that. And the story was so good. I'm so excited for the next one. I have it on my shelf and I can't wait to pick it up. So yeah, I think this is gonna get a 4.5 stars. I really love this book. I loved Emily, not just because we have the same name, which is super cool, but also because she was so quirky and like socially awkward, and I feel like really unique for a female main character, but she also had subtle badassery when it came to her knowledge of the fairies, how she could get things done because of that knowledge. I was like, ooh, go off, you're cool. And I also love she comes into this community with this small town in Norway, and I loved that small town community feeling that we got from this as the book went on. Even though she is kind of socially awkward, I feel like they really brought out her desire for human interaction and love for other people, whereas she didn't think that was possible, which is so cute and so enjoyable to read about. Next, we're going to talk about fiction because I want to end on a positive note with romance. Not that these fiction books were bad, they were just very deep and thought-provoking. They brought out many emotions, so I want to talk about them next. The first fiction book I read was Real Americans by Rachel Khong, and here we're following Lily Chen, who is a broke Chinese American in New York City who falls in love with the heir of a vast pharmaceutical fortune. So very separate sides of the coin here. We have like the ultra wealthy and then the child of immigrant parents who is poor. The story unravels through the perspectives of 3 different members of Lily's family. So we have Lily, we have her son, and finally the perspective we get at the end is her mother. I feel like as we're walking through this story, we just get to see so many different sides to these characters because we see how each character views the other characters, and you feel different things when you're in, say, Lily's perspective or Nick's perspective or May, the mom's perspective. So that is a lot of fun. And then you also have this kind of underlying thread woven throughout of race and privilege and this bigger question of what would you do if you could determine your fate or another's fate? What if your fate could be chosen for you? What if you could choose to not have cancer? You know, what if you could select the traits that your child will get? These questions get brought up throughout the entire story, and you get to see how that affects each character, and there's like a little bit of a science fiction element with the genetics of it all. Yeah, all the characters went through different things in their life. Seeing at the end the grandma and her story, how she came over from China and what she went through there to get where she was in America, who she met along the way, and then starting with Lily's story and how she goes through her life, and then Nick, and they all kind of have this like hopelessness about them, which makes the tone of the book kind of sad and very thought-provoking and philosophical. There's also another science fiction element with regards to time, and another question that gets brought up a lot is what would you do if you could have more time? I really enjoyed this book. I hadn't read a book as thought-provoking as this book in a long time. I took my time reading it over a few days, and I'm really glad I did that. So it's set in a few different places. So you have New York City, you have San Francisco, and then you have a small island off the coast of Washington, I think it is. So the settings are super fun. I read it in New York City, so to be able to kind of read a story about wealth and privilege in a place where there is such a large gap was very interesting. I feel like I read this book at the right time. I will say there was some threads throughout the book that I feel like could have been stronger, specifically with the son and the father and like their relationship, or specifically with Nick and his father and what goes on in their relationship. But other than that, I really enjoyed it, and I don't have too many bad things to say about it, which is why it got 5 stars. So the next fiction book I read was historical fiction, and that is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna, and this book thoroughly destroyed me. I didn't think a book could destroy me as much as this book did. Why did no one tell me it was gonna be that bad? Maybe someone did, because I told my cousin I was reading this and she had read it a couple weeks ago, and she told me to buckle up. When I let her know that I was starting this book, I wasn't prepared. I wasn't strapped in enough. I wasn't buckled enough for how thoroughly this book just ate at my soul and just made me sob and question how humans can do so many evil things, but how so much good can exist in the world too. This book was an intense experience. It might be one of the best books I've ever read. Just how Kristen Hanna approaches this book and the situation. It's set during World War II. You're following 2 different sisters in Nazi-occupied France from 1940 to 1945. It takes you through the entire occupation from when the Germans arrive to after they're forced out. Literally, the journey these characters went through I just can't fathom how strong people were to actually go through similar things in real life. Like, it just amazes me so much. But it also is so sad to see like how people can do horrible things to just be like good people because they want power over them, or they believe they're better than them, or because they can do whatever they want because I have the power and you don't. It irks me so much, and I feel like I'm getting emotional. I was getting so pissed off. I cried so many times while reading this book. The ending in the last chapter actually destroyed me. Oh, for the count, left the chat. I was gone to another dimension. If you know, you know. When I got to like what one character said at the end, and when one of the characters was introducing someone to another character, absolutely throttled, severely unwell, like bawling, ugly cry, so bad. I just have to give props to Kristen Hanna. The research that went into this book, to how it was presented, I was hooked. The care she gave to these characters and the topic and how she walks you through it. Like, I can imagine reading this book might be hard for so many people, but I think it's so important to have these stories out there for people to consume, especially as we get further away in time from the events of this book in real life, since it's been almost 80 years. I just think this book should be read by everyone, but also make sure you're taking care of yourself while you're reading this book, because it's a journey, it's a roller coaster, it's heartbreaking and devastating, but also inspires hope and the resilience of humans. Actually insane, so powerful. This is the book I didn't give a rating to. I don't even know how you're supposed to slap a rating on the things that happen on these pages. I guess the movie's supposed to come out next year, and I don't even know if I can see this. I literally have chills when I thought about that. I don't even know if I could see that in a movie form. I probably will, but I'll literally bring a whole box of tissues to the theater and use them all because it was just that good. And like the whole time, just emotions are getting brought up. Oh gosh, it was so good. Okay, you see, that's why we didn't end off on the fiction section, and that's why we're gonna end off on the romance section. So I read 2 romance books this month. One was a small town cowboy romance, and that was Lost and Lassoed by Lila Sage. This is the 3rd book in the series, and a lot of people I think have enjoyed it, but it was kind of my least favorite, and I don't know if that's just because I've read a lot of cowboy romances recently and I just wasn't in the mood, but I like ate this up so fast. Granted, it is a little less than 300 pages, so it's pretty short, or it like might just be exactly 300 pages, but we're following Gus, who is the oldest brother of the Ryder siblings, who are the siblings that the 3 books so far have focused on, and the setting is their ranch and their hometown. And then we're following Teddy, who is the best friend of Gus's sister, and the sister was who the first book was about, so it's a best friend's brother, sister's best friend trope, which I don't hate. It was also very heavy enemies to lovers, and I feel like they were enemies for a lot of the book. And then there's also a single dad nanny. Like, there's so many tropes in this book. I was like, what is going on? I just didn't really feel connected to the relationship. That's not to say that I didn't enjoy it, but yeah, I just didn't feel connected. I didn't really feel any emotions get brought up. I'm glad where the story went and like the conflicts made sense. I gave it 3 stars because I did enjoy the process of reading, but how many times can I say I didn't feel connected? I also felt like there was so many different threads woven throughout that could have been developed more, which contributes to maybe my not feeling connected. I was being really nitpicky about that stuff, and that's how I know. If I'm like obsessed with the characters or obsessed with the story, if there's like small nitpicky things, I don't really care, I'll overlook it. But in this book, I wasn't really overlooking it, so that's how I knew I just didn't mesh with the story, and that's okay. I would still recommend it if you've read the other 2 books, or if you like small town romances, because you're gonna get all those same vibes. We're in the 3rd book in the series, so you're getting the found family, you get to see the other characters. I will say I did enjoy, because this is best friend's brother, sister's best friend, you do get a lot of the best friend and kind of how relationship can evolve as lives change and we grow, and as you age and you get into relationships or you move, all these things. So I did like to see that, and I enjoyed that part of the book. So overall, gonna give it 3 stars, and would still recommend it though. I wouldn't say don't pick it up because I didn't connect with it, because just because I didn't connect with it doesn't mean you won't connect with it. The last book we have to talk about is a reread, and I feel like I have a problem with my obsession of this book because it might be criminal how much I think about this book, how much I think about these characters, how much I love every single part of this book. And if you don't like this book, that's fine, but like don't tell me, because I can't take any criticisms on this book because I'm so in love with it. I gave this book 5 stars, and the book in question is Play Along by Liz Tom Ford, which is the 4th book book in the Windy City series. I've never loved a romance more. This book is incredible. So basically, we're following Isaiah and Kennedy, and they find themselves connected after a night in Vegas. Isaiah is a professional baseball player, and Kennedy is their team doctor. He's been pining after her for how many years? After this night in Vegas, things take a turn. These characters are literally my safe space, and that's because I feel like their relationship and how Isaiah made Kennedy feel so safe made me feel safe while reading this book. Like, I was never stressed out. I was just so happy the entire time. Isaiah was the sweetest male main character, and I'm obsessed with that. Everything he did for her, how comfortable he made her when people in her life would tell her things about her weren't normal, or you need to not do this because it, like, basically manipulating her because she's not normal. He would be like, no, that's who you are, but that doesn't mean it's a bad thing, or that doesn't mean it's not normal because it's who you are. So opened my heart up and grew it 5 sizes. How like the Grinch's heart shrinks, my heart grew that many sizes when I was reading this book. How they open up to each other throughout the book and how they get more comfortable as they go on. I love them so much. I love this book so much. Probably gonna read it again because I just can't get enough of it. It makes me happy. When I was in New York City, which my New York City book shopping video will be up as a part of Bookmas, but I was trying to find this book in New York City so bad, and I could easily just order it from Amazon, but I want to get it in person. It's self-published, so I read it on Kindle Unlimited again. I love the physical copy because it's literally one of my favorite books and one of my favorite book couples I have ever read. Since it's also the 4th book in an interconnected standalone series, you're gonna have community vibes. These characters are professional athletes in Chicago, so it's fun to get that perspective too in the romance book. I loved getting to see the old characters again, but really what stands out is Isaiah and Kennedy and the journey that this book takes them on. Please read this book so we can rave about it together, or if you don't like it, that's fine, I guess. Just don't tell me. All right, we have officially covered the 6 books I read in November, which is crazy. We only have 1 month left of the year. I know I missed some wrap-ups this summer, but I can't believe that. Also, happy Bookmas Day 4. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the rest of my Bookmas uploads. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!